After regaining my media literacy skills, we're back with chapter 114. And man, Kunishige Rokuhira is just a gremlin. Bro is not doing well, but you know, love him all the same. It was really nice chapter to kind of see Rokuhira as not an adult, not as the legacy, but as like the human himself. And he's kind of just a weirdo, but in a fun way. But also to make abundantly clear, he is very smart and gifted. Because he's like a silly guy who's hungry, but then he throws the rock on the ground and is like, ah, I get it now. It's collected at like 20 dots in 1 second, which is cool. But the big thing of note is he's just super smart. You can see the like fascination with the Datenseki, and also with the, like, you can see him agonizing it, but you can see the same eyes as Chihiro, those intense gaze when he sees the rock and he's like, yeah, if I throw this Missouri energy, it's gonna blow up. But he's great. It's really just such a good establishment for Shiba and Rokuhira's relationship in that time, to kind of get a sense of who they were, where it's like Shiba really is like, this guy, he's a weirdo, but he's good. And you get to see the true weirdo on display, and that's fine. It's good to see. It gives us that extra dimension we're kind of needing on Kunishige to flesh out the man that made the swords. And then we also learn Miss Soga, she's the princess has a prophecy, which is interesting. The blood connections of things are starting to fall into place, which means it's going to be oh so tragic when they actually do. But it was a good balanced chapter of like giving us things of character establishment, but also being like a pretty funny chapter, which was good. But you can see the gears beginning to turn, because he's like, I see this rock, and what if I do this? It might work. Like you can see the swordsmith in him, that fascination with the material that he could make into a sword, where he's just looking at it as the gears are turning in his head, where he's still himself, but you can see him growing towards that person we know from the zeitgeist of the part 1. But of course, him going for food is very funny. She was like, hey buddy, here's a nice little hamburger steak, come on. And Rokuhira's Kunishige is like, yummy, yummy. And then we get our little glimpse into the research lab with Mr. Sushi Chef, who I'm hard pressed to say they're gonna give a strong opinion on him. But I'm also like, the fact that he's a sushi chef to me is like, okay, this guy might be cooking. Because I feel like I mean, the story backs it up, but I'm also like, there's Kunishige, you know, the guy who made like 20 billion weapons of mass destruction. And then there's like the guy who's a sushi chef who just kind of has aura because he's a sushi chef and not a swordsmith. And I'm like, he's hiding his power level, okay? We might be doing that. But then they're also like, yeah, there are a lot of swordsmiths. It's a sword-centered society, as they put it, which is an interesting phrase, but it is what it is. But there's 3 big guys for the swordsmiths, which I'm assuming we're going to see all 3 at some point. And then Kunishige is going to pull up and be like, you guys are stupid. Like, he's going to wash them all. But I'm curious to see how they're going to, one, handle Kunishige just pulling up, because Shiba has not told anybody. He's kind of just going to pull up with him and be like, hey everybody, here's my friend, he's really smart. And I'm sure he'll beef with Mr. Sushi Chef, because he's got aura, but he's also got the like fraudulent aura. But also I think it's just going to be like Kunishige, we know he's kind of like the goat swordsmith basically. But all in all, I'm very curious to see the other researchers. I kind of am curious on how we're going to fit all the people into places basically. Because we've got Mashiro, who bro is probably dead. We don't see this guy later. He's probably got some tragic thing. We've got Chiaki. We got Princess Soga's prophecy, woman herself. And you can see the not longing eyes Kunishige has, but that's a ways off still. Really just a groundwork chapter, which is good. I think it's nice to see the groundwork again, where we are engaging with this arc as a part 2, where we know the things that happened afterwards, and we're filling in the gaps beforehand, where it's interesting to see the people at the places in time they are now as opposed to where they go later, of which it's really only Kunishige and Shiba, because everyone else is presumably either irrelevant or dead. And then there's Mr. Sushi Chef. They're younger, they're not as wistfully like Kunishige as an adult, who is still kind of has his gremlin energy in this, but to a lesser degree. And then Shiba, who's kind of just more of the same, but a little battle hardened now. But I'm very curious to see how things will go, because honestly, there is so much to do with the swordsmith stuff, because it's the sword center society. So it's like, how did Kunishige get to making the swords? Is it going to be like a hyperfixation, I guess would be the best way to put it, where he's so enamored with this material? Because you can see when he looks at them and he's like, you can see his eyes just intently gazing at this new material that fascinates him so much. Because really every panel you see him looking at it, there is something like he is pondering this thing and looks just absorbed in it. So it's going to be one of those, is like, did he make this because he was just so enamored with the prospect of making a sword? Or how deep are we going to go into the morality of it all, which realistically is going to be very deep into it, because, you know, given that this is part 2, there will have to be some justification, explanation, a logic behind why he made the swords as he did. And right now we're kind of seeing step 1, where he is fascinated by the material, and we're going to kind of gradually work towards that. But really, I could see part 2 being really long. It kind of just depends on how they take about this. Whereas if we're going to just kind of cut at the war, or if we're going to go basically up until like chapter 1, where we're going to get the whole war, the whole malediction, everything. Or if we're going to get up to the malediction and then cut. Because we know to some extent, and I could also see it being used as a flashback for when we reconfront Soga, to be like, this is what he experienced, this is how it is. Whereas now this feels very much like the kind of the origin of the swords, if I had to kind of put it in that way. The why they exist, which doesn't necessarily need to lead into the how the characters made them the way they are and influence them. I think we'll get there, but either way, a good groundwork chapter. Mr. Sushi Chef has some aura, you love to see it, and I'm looking forward to more.